I'm Bob Bazans. I'm an alcoholic. Sober through the grace of God and AA since the 10th of December, 1967. For that, I'm very grateful. It's been a nice weekend. I was tired and I'm traveling too much, and I was not particularly looking forward to getting off on the road for one more time, and I've enjoyed this. I'm impressed with what you are, Karen and Jeff and my hosts, Kevin and Colin, and it's just been nice from one end to the other. You made an offer also to have my wife come. That is rare. My wife got COVID at the International, so she wasn't up to doing that, but your generosity was noticed and appreciated. I love being with Ralph and Leslie and Paul and Jack, even you, Carla, and Rich. I love the relationships that we have, that we don't see each other sometimes for a few months, and you come back and there's like no time has lapsed in that. We all feel that way about the members that we've been sharing the rooms with for quite some time, and it's a cool thing. Okay, I started drinking when I was a freshman in high school, 4'11", 95 pounds. I was the second smallest kid in my class. My mother said I was one of 7 kids. Mom sent the oldest of us to school early, so I was the youngest and smallest. I went to a military academy, Catholic military academy on a college campus. We drank in high school like most people drink in college. We had fraternities. Of my 6 closest friends in high school, and 3 of them from grade school, 4 of us are members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and 2 of our wives. All the men have 50 years of sobriety. All 6 couples have been married 57 years. I mean, are those odd? I never knew Catholics drank more than others, but if we're having a contest, I'm bringing my people. It is. I lost Jack last week, suddenly, and that's the first of us that have gone. And he had, I think, 54 years. He was at a party celebrating. They were going to open a new restaurant in Des Moines, Iowa. And they had all the bankers and the investors that were there in this party at this very fancy house. And Jack, in a blackout, came down in his underpants in the middle of that group and got on the rocking horse and started rocking back and forth. So Jack gets up in the morning and he's going to cook breakfast. And he goes in to his father-in-law, whose house it was, and his father-in-law says, "You're fired." And Jack was just devastated. He went back to his wife and said, "You won't believe what happened." And she said, "I want you out of the house." And so I had to track Jack down. I went to every bar I knew. We was in some cheap. We was the YMCA downtown Minneapolis, and I got him, and we got him a treatment, and he was sober ever since. One of the sweetest men I have ever known. Very cool. I drank my brains out in high school. I was insecure. I found alcohol, and it was magical. We were kids of those Second World War people that played hard, worked hard, and drank hard, and made life look pretty attractive. And we stole their booze and wore suits and ties and found places that was service. When we were barely able to do that. By the time I finished high school, my drinking problem was obvious to a hell of a lot of people, including my parents, and I had a chance to go away to school. Thought that was a good idea. Thought my drinking would become normalized. It did not. I drank my way to the University of Notre Dame in the middle of my senior year. In the yearbook with my class ring, I walked out. I was in civil engineering, carrying 25 credits a semester. It gets kind of tough to bluff your way through a thermodynamics exam. I'm going to school. Well, that semester I wasn't going to school, but I was going to school one day a week. I got asked to give a talk down at school about 9 months ago. And my host had a priest drive us around the campus in a golf cart, Linda and I and my host. And I was trying to get in touch. It's a beautiful camp. I was trying to get in touch with who was that 19-year-old kid that just woke up one day and said the hell with school and became a full-time alcoholic. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't understand that. It made no sense to me, and yet I lived it, and I did it. When I left school, I had to get I was due to be commissioned. I was an ROTC. I had to get a medical release. The medical release I got was for alcoholism. I was diagnosed an alcoholic when I was 18 or 19 years old. I thought that was a bunch of malarkey. I just didn't make any sense to me what I did. And I left school. I came home to a set of really disappointed parents. I had been conning my parents as to what was going on. And I finished school at a local university. And when I finished school, my father asked me to leave home, my hero. I'm one of 7 kids. I'm the oldest boy. And he said, we love you, but we don't know what to do with you. Between the car accidents and an occasional arrest and all the things that go with a young budding alcoholic. So I got a job at a liquor store. It's important to use your gifts. And I had that job about 6 months, and I got fired. I went over, I got a job as a waiter downtown Minneapolis at a private club. I'm living sort of on Skid Row, $10 a night rooms, and I'm shacked up with waiters and waitresses that I work with. Dr. Seuss, that child author, those are actual photographs of people I lived with during the last year of my drinking. And I go to a party one night, I get my face kicked in, and I get fired as a waiter. I had no place to go. I went back to my family and asked if I could move back in the house. They allowed me to move back in the house. They asked me not to drink. I promised not to drink. And, of course, I couldn't not drink. And when I moved back in the house, I made maybe the largest full-court press that I had ever done to kind of clean my act up. I was as baffled by my life as they were about my life. I mean, I was a kid you would have picked for your team until you found out that I don't finish anything. Okay, I was always smart but never effective. My mother always said, "You're not very bright, Bob. Dress well," and that has, kind of been the thing. So I'm at home, and I was due to be. So now I'm going to get drafted. Vietnam War is on. I'm no longer exempt. So I go down and I get accepted into officer candidate school. I'm getting ready to go to Vietnam. And they lose my file, and they ask me to come in and take the physical for the 4th time. I go in and take the physical, and they fail me for a hearing problem. I can't hear dog whistles and tree toads. I mean, it was just now I don't have to go to Vietnam. I get back together with the woman that I had gone with for quite some time. I get a job as an executive trainee with a manufacturing concern. I bought my first car, and I thought, God, I'm going to be a grown-up. Only I couldn't quit drinking. Just before I went back to my senior year at college, I was beaten up, robbed, rolled, pistol whipped, shot at, thrown out of the 2nd story of a hotel, ended up in a psych ward. And they were not going to let me go back to school. I talked my way out of that. They let me go back to school. I was sober for 2 or 3 months. And I think I proved 2 things to myself. Is number 1, I could quit drinking. And number 2, I'm still a dork. There's something else wrong with me other than just drinking. And so now I'm the company drunk. I use up my sick leave in the first 2 months at work. I'm falling asleep at my desk. The photographer is hiding me in the dark room. He was a buddy of mine at this big corporation. I quit that job. When I quit the job, I went back and made amends with the guy once I joined AA that hired me. And he said, "God, you interviewed so well." And I said, "We do." There are some performance issues involved in the process, but we interview well. I quit that job. I got a sales job. I got the sales job, and about 2 months into the sales job, I go out on a 4-day drunk. And some Thursday in like July or August of 1967, I wake up hugging the toilet, doing my morning exercises, and that was my moment. To explain how disgusted I was with me would be kind of hard to do. And it had been recommended to me that I look into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I called, actually, the National Council, and they gave me the number of Intergroup. I called Intergroup, got the old-timer down at the office. He talked to me for 10 or 15 minutes, and then he said, got on another line, called a couple of guys, and said, could you go meet two guys at 6 o'clock at the St. Clair Broiler, a mile from my house? I said, yeah. So we hang up the phone. As soon as I hung up the phone, I thought, this is an overreaction. You're 20. It was. I'm 23 years old. I mean, it just, yeah, but I wanted to go see what these two guys look like, you know. So I go meet these two guys. I have been in front of every kind of help a young person could be in front of. Doctors, lawyers, Indian chief, bishop, priests, nuns, you know, psychologists, psychiatrists, proctologists. I have been in front of every kind of help. I've never talked to another person who had a drinking problem. Ever. Two men come in. One guy was 6 months, one guy was 6 years. They said, we're from Alcoholics Anonymous, had a drinking problem, found an answer for it, want to share it with you. I hope it helps you. If it doesn't help you, don't worry about it. It helps us talking to guys like you, and they told me their story. They changed my life in 45 minutes. They changed my life. I could have said, I don't want to do what you're recommending, but we're all good BS detectors because we're all liars. What these men were sharing with me was the real deal. I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous that night. I met my sponsor, both sponsors. I ended up with two of them in a short time. And I drank twice after walking in my first meeting, once after a month, and once on my honeymoon. I got sober for about 3 months, and then when my wife and I got married, we went in Mexico, and I drank it, and I had my last drink on the airplane on the way home. My sponsor was the 12-step champion of the Uptown group of Alcoholics Anonymous. He was a mailman. He was a Second World War vet that lost half his crew in a bomb disposal unit. And I got to, you know, it was just, he was marvelous. His wife was my sponsor, and we were never, in the 43 years that he was my sponsor, did we ever make a call to him and say, can we come over? With children, without children, fighting. He was one of those houses where the door was always open and the coffee pot was always on. He was my copy of the big book. And now I'm sober. And I thought, hey, I'm going to know. Now I finally found out what the hell's wrong with me. My psychiatrist diagnosed me at 19. I did not believe that. My doctor told me I had an enlarged liver at 3 years of age. When I came in, that seemed kind of odd to me. And my gift is I loved AA from the moment I walked in the front door. I had ended up working with a lot of young people, and they'd go as long as I would drive them or pay attention to them. But as soon as, that kind of going, they didn't identify, they weren't ready, whatever the hell it was, I was ready to stay in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have done so many things wrong. And the thing that I didn't do wrong is I stayed. And I stayed active. And my life changed in ways that it's just extraordinary. Amazing. So when I came home and turned myself into my sponsor, in Minnesota, 90% of the meetings were closed-step discussion meetings. Started with, you open the meeting with 5 minutes on whatever step we were on. We did a roll call. Then we picked a name of who was going to do the dishes and who was going to clean the ashtrays. And then if there was a couple of people that weren't on the roll call, we, asked someone to call them during the week. And you gave the step, then we broke up upstairs and downstairs, and we discussed how the step operated in our lives. 95% of the meetings were that. We just went over and over the steps. Today we have the same variety of steps that you guys have. We have speaker meetings and big book studies and all those sorts of things, but in those days we didn't. I didn't get in touch with my defects of character in the first little bit in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was on a honeymoon. I just liked everything about it. I liked the language. I liked the meetings. I just was enthralled with AA. I couldn't get enough. And it was towards the end of my first year and into my second year that one by one I started to get my life handed to me and my defects of character pushed up against my nose. I kind of spilled the beans on that this afternoon. So I had about 5 or 6 major big things that were going on in my life. I was a money spender. I spent more money than I made. If you do that over a long period of time, you will end up in debt. I just want to report that to you in case you didn't know where it was going. And I had a gambling problem. More of a hobby, 5 hours a day, 4 days a week. But I'm making $5,000 a year playing backgammon. My salary was $6,000 a year. You know, so I mean, we're talking. The first car I bought was $3,000, new. You know, I mean, the numbers don't. We had a 2,000 square foot apartment with a fireplace, a maid's room, and a porch for $125 a month. I bought that building later and condoed it, but I mean that $125 a month. I'm an unhelpful husband. My wife's an RN. She's getting up at 6 to go to, or 5:30 or 6 to go to work. I'm not help. All I want to do is AA. Okay. I'm a poor worker. That's my biggest secret. I have trouble getting to work. I don't stay at work, and I don't work at work. Not that funny. It's a Minnesota thing. Don't worry about it. No one. I had a wall built up around me before I came in AA that hid me from what I thought you couldn't see. You like me, but you only like what I let you see. I tore that wall down when I called Alcoholics Anonymous, tore it all the way down with my sponsor, and I tore it down when I did my first, fourth, and imperfectly when I did my first, fourth, and fifth step. My first, fourth, and fifth step was kind of like a third-grade art project that Mom put on the refrigerator. It did not get to the causes and conditions that we talk about in the book and that we talk about in our lives. I love the way that most of us look back on our early sobriety and think how lame it was, and that we really didn't get it until we were in grade school. What would you expect? You know, so if someone's giving a sex information lecture, and you have people from 3rd grade all the way up to 30 years of age, they're going to hear the same words, and they're going to have a different experience all the way through that. And I look back and I tried to think that I was supposed to have the experience that a 25 or that a 30-year-old or someone sober 5 years had. I wanted what I love the old timer. So now my defects of character. I've got all those 5 or 6 things I told you about. None of them made my first inventory. They made my second inventory. I really am busting my britches to try to make this thing work, and I'm making 0 progress on money spending, work, helping my wife, my marriage, gambling. I mean, 0 progress. And I wake up, and I'm in my 6th and 7th year of sobriety, and I'm in trouble. My story is that I'm a good starter and a poor finisher. I don't know what to do. I'm trying to clean up 1 or 2 of these things, and I know I had to find out what God had to do with Wednesday. But I'm not going to go to God until I get rid of 1 or 2 on the list. I mean, I just can't go with the whole list. But I couldn't even do that, so I started back through the steps for the 3rd time. Powerless and unmanageable. Anybody with a room temperature IQ could see I was powerless and unmanageable. You know what? I had lost step 2. I believed it for you, and I believed it for us, and I no longer believed it for me because I'm 7.5 or 8 years sober and my pants are on fire, and I'm thinking about putting a gun on my mom. I'm not thinking about drinking, but I'm thinking about putting a gun. I'm so damn sick and tired of being a loser. I had to regain step 2. I took step 3 on my knees with my sponsor in his office. We didn't do that much in those days, but I started to hear some of the talkers in AA talk about that, and so I did that. I did the best 4-step I've ever done to this day, and I've probably done 25 of them. No conditions, no lies, no withholding, no hedging. And I went to my sponsor. In those days, our group lined you up with clergy to do the 5th step. And this time I wanted to do it with my sponsor. Once again, I'm hearing people do that all over AA, and he said, sure. So I went to my sponsor, and I said, I think I'm ready to do whatever I have to do. I feel like I'm dying of thirst lying next to a lake. I said, if you came to my house with my problems, I think I could give you pretty good advice on what to do. I just can't or won't do it. I am so bloody, sick and tired of can't or won't do it that I could just spit. And I did my 5th step with that man. And we cried a little bit, talked a little bit. So he said, I want you to find a psychologist that works. You've got a lot of issues around money, work, failure, success. My dad was a pretty successful guy. And he said, I want you to find a psychologist that works with business people. I'm a mailman. I want you to start that conversation and then bring that conversation back to me, and we will recapitulate that conversation with respect to AA. I can't tell you how much I did not want outside help. I thought that made me different. I thought it made me look like I didn't have a good program. Hello. So it is. So I find this wonderful psychologist who wanted to get my parents involved. I said, no. Well, you get your wife involved. Or when your wife's involved, there's just a lot of information that's in the room that is not all that necessary to recovery, and some of it is pretty embarrassing. Yes. We get your kids involved. I said, yeah. So I'm in there explaining what my company's going to go broke and I'm going to lose everything I had. Yeah. He looks at me and he said, why are you so afraid of failing? And it was like he reached into my soul to the perfect point. And what I made a discovery, it was like he struck me, which my impulse was to strike him. And I said, look, I've lived in this town all my life. I'm in the investment business. And, I said, you're a doctor. You go broke, you just walk down the hall 6 months from now and pound it on, sign on another door, and within 6 months you're making $100,000. I'm going to lose everything. He looked at my wife, and he said, if Bob lost everything, would he lose you? Linda said, yes. No. My wife said, no, wouldn't lose me. If you can't lose, you can't play. I'm a salesman who doesn't make sales calls. I just lie about activity reports. I don't even take a chance you're going to drag me across the desk and force me to sell you something, because I'm not there. Ever. That night I discovered fear. I'm swimming in fear. I'm afraid of being a husband. I'm afraid of being a dad. I'm afraid of work. I'm afraid of failure. Hell, I'm afraid of success. I didn't know that. I'm swimming in fear, and I think fear is dog snakes and tall buildings. I'm swimming in fear. 2 weeks later, I'm in my living room. I missed I got up late. I went to work. I left early. I got in a backgammon game. I won $500. I missed dinner. I got in a fight with my wife, and I slapped one of the kids. One of those days you'd like to have videotaped and sent to the General Service Office to show what 8 years of recovery could do. And I said, gee, it happened again. I said, it happened again. Weren't you there? Yeah, but it's so habitual. It's like I don't even have to think about it. It's like I'm just in it, like I'm in a blackout. And all of a sudden I realize, bullshit. Your life is that way because you designed it that way. You sound like a guy who wants to quit gambling. You want to gamble whenever the hell you want to gamble for as much money as you want to gamble and not have problems because of gambling. You want money without work. You want your wife's love and attention without spending adequate time with them. Not a very good design. And all of a sudden I realized that I had tried as hard as I knew how to try, ineffectively, but it wasn't like I was a casual member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had tried as hard as I knew how to try it, and I had failed. Now, I don't know if I could have said exactly those words to myself, but that I said that night. And I got down on my knees, and I was given the opportunity to take the 6th and the 7th step at a level that I had never taken them before. 6 steps said we're entirely ready to have God, not Bob, remove our defects of character. 7 steps said we humbly ask to remove our shortcomings. I have spent 7 or 8 years trying to get rid of them. I do not have the power. I have the responsibility, but I'm the pipe, not the well. It happens through me, not by me. And I said the 6th and the 7th step prayer to the best of my recollection. I quit gambling that night. I've been trying to quit gambling for 5 or 6 or 7 years. I turned the checkbook over to my wife. Not all spouses are good money managers. Mine is. She could pay half a bill. God dangest thing I've ever seen in my life. I always thought if you paid half the bill, they'd think you didn't have the money. But she got us out of trouble in a relatively short period of time. I made appointments about going to work, staying at work, and working at work. I remember I'm out in the parking lot, and I'm about to go make a sales call on the vice president of General Mills. I'm trying to sell him 10 or 20 grand in a deal. I can't get out of the car. I have to say the 3rd step prayer to get my body out of the car to go up there and call on this guy who I know isn't going to buy. I go up and I call on this guy, and he buys $20,000 worth. Our company makes $2 grand, which is 2 months' salary at this point in my life. And I'm on the elevator going down, and I've had this thought, you know, if a guy did that regularly, I started dating my wife every Friday night. I've dated my wife for 35 years every Friday night. It was a real, live, dangerous date. No other people on the date, no movies. Get dressed up in kind of a sexy dress, go to a restaurant, have a couple of drinks. It was our romance night. We were talking about kids and bills. That was not how we fell in love. We had to start checking up in Chicago, and we started treating each other like if you had a new woman in your life. And I had to regain, and it was not easy at first. It was awkward for me at first, but I had to regain the romantic aspect of our relation. Best thing I have ever done. She knew, regardless of how busy I was or what I was doing, that we had Friday night. And when I was out saving the world at AA conferences, it was either Thursday night or it was Sunday night. And it was the best thing we've ever done. So my life takes off like it's on a rocket ship. It's not perfect, but I made enough money to burn a wet elephant over the next, 7 or 8 years. I've got we bought a 12-bedroom house, 5 fireplaces. I have a big Mercedes and I have a little Mercedes. I'm the guy in a expensive suit coming in the meeting thinking God has blessed me for all, what a wonderful member of AA. How would you like me in your group? I mean, there are issues with failure. Well, there are issues with success. I mean, you arrogant little dick. I mean, it is. So, and it was about as good as it could get for 6 or 7 years. And then they changed the Tax Act. And between the mid-1980s and late 1980s, I lost everything I had. I lost $10 million. I lost the big house. I sold the 2 Mercedes. I bought an 8-year-old Buick. I put myself in an allowance, $100 a week on my way. I'm up to $200 now. She puts $200 up. You feel kind of like you're kept, but it's not a bad feeling. And it never occurred to me, if any of you are praying to be a millionaire, include the idea of keeping it. Doesn't take much more effort. And It never occurred to me that I could lose, and I lost it, everything. And we sold the big house, and I bought a Rambler down the block that we still live in, which is a wonderful home for us today. Works out very well for us. Our middle boy came home, Peter, that little dork. Peter came home, got arrested for drunken driving, totaled out an automobile, ended up in jail, kind of his Christmas present for Linda and I. And he goes to treatment, then he ends up in Hazelden's halfway house, sober house. And they have a meeting on a Friday night, and we go to that meeting on a Friday night. I'm going bankrupt. In the middle of the meeting, I'm crying. I start crying when the meeting starts, and I cry mostly through. See that guy over there? He's got 24 years. How'd you like to have what he had? I think he's got the clap. I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. I had to find out who I was with money and who I was without money. You know, life's experiences. It has been a great run. We have 3 kids. Our oldest runs our company. He's a fabulous guy. His wife died of our disease in a homeless encampment in Minneapolis after 7 treatments, the mother of our grandchildren. She had a graduate degree in mathematics. She was very pretty. And she had a good program for a short period of time, and then they got a little bit lost, and the last 3 years, she didn't see her children. She gave them her absence. She knew when she was in their lives. She knew she was dying. She was in an encampment where people didn't use their last names. No one knew who you were. Someone happened to know who she was before, and that's how she happened. When the police got her, they called my son Peter because she had Peter's number in her purse for some reason. So Bill runs our company. Fabulous guy, sober 35 years. I know his name. I have trouble with how old he is, and I have trouble with how sober he is. Peter is sober about 31 or 2 years, and Daniel went back out after about 17, and he's a question mark. They're good men, which is the biggest gift in the world. They're good men, and it is so much due to my wife. My wife is the literally heart of our family. She's the lover in the family. I have the blessing of being married to a lover, and she has 58 years in Al-Anon this month. She has a better program than I have. Kind of like Chamberlain with Elsa. You know, when people really wanted an answer, they talked to Elsa. They wanted a long sharing, they talked with Chuck. My life has been as full as it can possibly be. After hiring bankruptcy attorneys and negotiating with the 5 banks or something like that we were allowed to keep the company. And after 4 or 5 years, things started to come back, and we built our company back, and today it's a very successful company. I have a great relationship with our 3 sons. That could have been different. The 2 toughest relationships I've had in my life are my business partner of 53 years, who's sober 62 years. I mean, between us, we have, like almost 110 years of sobriety, and we have fought about everything other than money. We are really different men. So my life has been extraordinarily full, and I'm extraordinarily blessed, and the thing I'm most grateful about is I didn't get what I deserved. It is, I'm in love with my wife. That's not an advertisement. It is witness to what you have brought about in my life. I was as self-centered as anybody. There were just a number of years where I paid little attention to her needs. And at about the same time that I broke down at 8 years of sobriety, she broke down. And she said, I'm dying. We're going to AA conferences. She said, Bob always had to sit in the front row. When the speaker speaks, she's crying going through. And long story short, she was doing part of the steps. And we came back, we had a little conversation after going to this wonderful AA talk. And she went back and started through 1, 2, and 3, called her sponsor, made an appointment to do 4 and 5, and her life took off like it was, our souls were restored. I mean, she's really quite a lady. I mean, it is very cool. But she had that same event at the same time that I did. And our programs sustained us during that time and have sustained us all the way through. People ask me, because I'm an old-timer and been around a long time, are you worried about AA? Do you think AA is going to be okay? And my answer is no, I'm not worried about Alcoholics Anonymous. Why not? And I said, well, I think we are doing so many things better than we have ever done them before. They said, what's the biggest difference you see? The biggest difference I see is that we've become more of a meeting-oriented society rather than a home group-oriented society. We have people go to many more meetings, but you can get kind of lost in that process. It is what it is. But we have, this idea that we have, when I first came in, all the talks were drunkalogs. All of them. Started with your first drink, ended with your last, spent the last 5 minutes on wife, kids, and job. But it was like the story of Christmas. If you could hear Norm Alpe, if you could hear Chuck Chamberlain, if you could hear, all the men and women who were doing that, if you could listen to the music, tell the story again. We're like little kids standing around the Christmas tree at Christmas. Tell us the story again. You'd hear some of these people 10, 15 times. I think it was only about 40 people, doing it all. Okay. But then Chamberlain started to turn the ship, and he started to bring recovery into his talk. Chamberlain and Cecil and Holly Martin and my dear friend that I can't remember his name from Winnipeg. They started to talk about the steps, and they started to bring recovery they started to run the steps and started to bring recovery into their talk. That first generation came in when they were 50 years old, 55 years old, only lived to be 65 years. The miracle was, and then I got sober and it was all okay. But the next generation wanted to know about what happened, how. And we started talking about the steps and recovery in a more detailed way than we ever had. And then the next iteration of our communication in Alcoholics Anonymous started to talk about problems in sobriety. We didn't talk about problems in sobriety. We got sober and everything was okay. But Chamberlain kind of leaked into that, and a group of people started to talk. People wanted to know. They're in the meeting. They're 25 years old and they're 10 years sober, and they want to know now what. What the hell are you doing now? My husband and I aren't getting along. We got financial issues. We got 2 kids at home. Now what? It's amazing today. It's just crazy. You can sit in your bedroom on your laptop and order drugs, gamble, and have sex. You'd never have to. Whatever happened to Bob? Well, he died. He starved to death. I don't know what. Forgot to eat. I don't know what the hell happened to him. If someone said, what's the single most surprising thing for you in your own recovery? And I think the most surprising thing in my own recovery was that I discovered how much I did not want to change. I would talk regularly about the changes I have made and the changes that I need to make and what's going on in my life, what my defects of character were. But I didn't want to change. If you're wondering why, anybody in the room have any serious problem that's less than 10 years old? 20 years old? How the hell do we have the program we have, with the grace we have, with the higher power that we have, that we're sitting in a room with a 10-year-old problem? Are we doing something wrong? Or the nature of life? Your ego views change like death. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has the 5 stages of death and dying: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Denial is, I don't have the problem. Anger is, why the hell is this happening to me? Bargaining is, God, take this away and I'll turn my life over to you. And as you go through those 3 and you come into depression, I'm not talking about a clinical depression, I'm talking about a circumstantial depression. And then Scott Peck in his book talked about, but if you allow depression to do its work, which is to grind the ego to dust, you go through depression into acceptance. And once you do that, everything's just A-okay. But most of us don't do that. Most of us go through denial, anger, and bargaining, and when we get to depression, the pain's too great, so we back away and recycle into denial, anger, and bargaining. Your ego says, look, do what you want to do. Take the steps. Do an inventory. Get a sponsor. Go to meetings. But get this straight. We are not changing. That's almost not a joke. Okay. It takes courage to live the life that we are being offered, but the life is so wonderful. To be able to have the opportunity to find out your gifts. Most of us, most drunks, die never getting well. They die with the box with their gift on, with the bow still on it, under the piano, and it's never been opened. And we got to live the second life that Paul talked about. Where do you do that? I mean, if you tell someone that you're going to go call on someone, they say, why? And we're going to bring them in the program. What do you think is going to happen there? Well, we think they're going to have a spiritual awakening. I mean, people would laugh at that. They would think that, tambourine time or whatever the hell it is. We don't laugh at that. We have the experience all the time. So I'm at 8 years. So in my first 7 years, I tried and failed, and I still grew. But there comes a time where you either change or you start building an addition onto your house to accommodate the problem. Chasers hang out with the chasers, gamblers hang out with the gamblers. You make a deal, I won't call you on your crap, you don't call me on mine. Deal? Bad deal. I have the opposite deal with the people that I sponsor and the people that sponsor me, that they have the spiritual permission to talk to me about anything they see. If you see me out of line, please, nicely, grab me and sit me down. Don't go and say, I saw this coming for 2 years. I don't want to, if I'm in deep doo-doo, I don't want to have someone say that about me. I want them to say that we came and talked. The biggest danger that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous, as I forget what I said and didn't say, but I think I said, it's a little bit of the spiritual pride that Paul talked about and Carla talked about, and it's also mind-boundness. We have, the 2 choices you have is your ego and intellect can run your life, or you either have a God-centered life in the program. If you have ego and intellect, you've got a 16-year-old in charge of your life. I mean, it is not, you would now have a knife in the gunfight. You are just under-equipped. The changes that have to happen, the things that we have to do, the practices that we have to do are not of the mind. They are not psychological. They're spiritual. A lot of us, that ruffles our feathers. Tough. I don't know anybody who's got a decent program and been in a long time that doesn't have some grounding in a power greater than themselves. And if you don't, all of us know the words. All of us could pass the multiple test, you know. All of us could give you 5 minutes on step 3. But a lot of us that could give you the 5 minutes in step 3 don't have that step working as well as it needs to work in our lives. Knowing is the booby prize. You know it, but you know it in a way that makes a difference. And the way that makes a difference is when it's grounded in the power greater than ourselves and it's grounded in the principles of the program. And if we don't have that grounding, what happens to us is we'll float out of Alcoholics Anonymous. We'll get to the edge of that flat earth that Paul talked about. It is, I don't know, what a gift. It would seem almost impossible. I sponsor a guy that had 19 years of sobriety, sponsoring 15 people, giving talks all over the country. And he walked into a bar to pick up dinner for his wife and children. And the guy behind the bar said, "My God, I haven't seen you in 20 years. Have a drink." And he had 5 drinks. And there was no hole in this guy's program. This is not people who say, "Oh, he's hiding something." He wasn't. He got taken out by a rogue wave, the damnedest thing I have ever seen. I got on a plane the next day when I heard it, and I went and talked to him. He had as good a program as I had, and he got taken out with I've never seen anything like it, and I don't expect that I would probably see that same event again. And he's back, I don't know, with 18 months, you know, and he's doing a great job. It's really a wonderful thing to see. The people in my life today that I'm closest to are just doing the deal. That's who I want in my life. I don't want, you know, when I was first started speaking, I like being around the big shots. I don't need to be around the big shots. I'm more of a cheerleader. My ball has topped the hill. I really am I sponsor a lot of people who are active in the program. And my need to be out talking is a hell of a lot less than it used to be years ago. I'm tired of Bob. I've been dragging my ass around for a very long period of time. I'm tired of my game. I'm tired of my reactions. I used to think I was pretty important. I used to think that what I thought was pretty important, I would tell my family or my business friends or whatever the hell it was, and I thought you should be impressed with that. I have almost no need to do that anymore. I do it from time to time, but I don't have any need. I'm tired of my story. You know, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. It is easier for me to be, it takes less to take care of me today. I'm less high maintenance. I used to be thought, reaction. Now I have a space. I get a thought, I get a reaction, and I say, wow, I haven't had that in a while. And I have a choice. And in that space, I have a choice of being a human being. In that space, I can center in my program. If we don't somehow start to move, and people were talking today about what do I do, and I said that I think the changes that we make in our senior days and our last third of our life is more about being than doing. You can end up pretty dried out by just being a chronic doer. If it's centered, if your soul's in the game, and that's kind of what has to happen. And that is what I love about Alcoholics Anonymous. When I came in, I didn't know what it was all about. And after I was in 2 or 3 months, if you would have grabbed me and said, what's it all about? I kind of knew. I couldn't have told you what it was. But I had a sense of what it was all about. And today I have a deeper relationship with the meaning of my life. My life is more full of meaning than it has ever been. Thank you for my life.